Good evening, I'm David French in Washington. The chair I'm sitting in is a cherished one. It's the anchor position for Bernard Shaw. Bernie and John Holloman, our correspondents who told you first of this war and then stayed up all through that night and that intrepid day, are now in Amman, Jordan, getting ready to come on here and talk with us. We saw Bernie getting ready to come on with us. We hope to be having a conversation about their mad dash west to the safety of Jordan. The bombing of Baghdad as they were leaving and spent that awful night looked something like this. This is the videotape of what they were seeing out their hotel window that night. Courtesy of ABC News, these particular pictures, CNN and the other news people still there were only 45 were seeing. Let's listen to the horror of it.
This is it. This is it. This is it.
Some of the sights and the sounds seen by the man we're going to now Wednesday night and Thursday morning as the world was riveted to three journalists and what they could say to their phone line to the world. Bernard Shaw and John Holloman in Amman, Jordan. Bernie, there are a few happy moments in wartime. This is a very happy moment for the personal CNN family. God bless you. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, David. It is very good for us to be back, but we are aware that there are 3 CNN staffers still on the ground, still at ground zero in Baghdad. Peter Arnett, Nick Robertson, and Robert Weiner, the executive producer. And I must tell you that as we hugged each other and said goodbye this morning, John, you could see a feeling in their eyes, and
there was concern. Obviously, they were happy that we were able to leave, Bernie. But by the same token, they knew that CNN had to be represented in Baghdad for us to continue to attempt to cover this story. In case you're wondering why we left, the officials in Iraq would not let us do our job anymore. The communication circuit that we used to report to you the night of the first bombardment and for the following couple of days, we were ordered not to use that at one point late in the day yesterday. And
now there are censorship restrictions, and they frankly are working under a handicap, but work they will as long as they can. I should tell our viewers, John, that we are going to be very circumspect, very conservative in our remarks about what we saw, what we heard, and what we felt, because there's still journalists there, and we don't want to do anything whatsoever to undercut them by saying anything that the Iraqi government would consider provocative or sensitive to their sense of national security.
Bernie, I imagine the best thing for us to do for our viewers, and others along the network line may have their own ideas about this, but is to talk about some of the pictures that we brought back with us. We brought back 8 30-minute videotapes from Baghdad.
That's not all we had either. A lot of tape that was shot by one of the most enterprising cameramen in broadcast journalism, Mark Biello. A lot of those tapes were confiscated, taken away, and there was nothing we could do about it.
Mark had 4 cameras going at one time.
He had 4 cameras going, and the government of Iraq last night took two CNN cameras. I hope we get them back. Robert Wiener is working on that.
Yeah.
But these are cameras that were recording constantly, because you recall during the bombardments, a lot of times we had to hide under tables when the security check would come through the hotel trying to get people out of their rooms into the bomb shelters. Whenever there was a knock at the door, I would run 2 rooms away and get under a table, because as I think I explained, that if my thinking was that if you and Peter were picked off, one of us should be there to report, and you were doing the same thing.
That's right. I was
Bernie
hiding
and
in a
John, we're going to
closet in
show
my
that
hotel
tape now. We're going to show
Okay,
some
go
of
ahead.
that tape that we've been showing, and you were narrating for us live. You continue with what you were talking about. We're seeing the pictures from that night.
Yeah, this is the view out of our CNN bureau in Baghdad, just looking out. There were still some lights on in the city of Baghdad at the beginning of the air raid. The Iraqis had several practices in weeks before about how to do a complete blackout, but well, you can see what happened. These pictures were taken just a few minutes after that blackout using a night scope camera, we believe, that Fabrice Moussas, the cameraman for ABC, was able to use. And you can see the tracer fire going up into the air there, one after the other. The tracers went up, but with every one that you could see like that, there are either 5 or 10 bullets that you can't see. So the anti-aircraft guns were really going wild, trying to hit the Allied coalition planes.
And what is deadly about what you're seeing and hearing is that for every round you see going in the air, it obviously has to come down. And one does not know how many Baghdadis were wounded or killed by anti-aircraft fire that returned to Earth once it had expired in its trajectory. On the streets of Baghdad, people just scampering, scurrying, trying to run for cover.
The sky was lit up like the 4th of July, Bertie. We mentioned this several times the night of this in our live coverage. It was, it looked like a terrific fireworks show, but obviously these were fireworks that had death connected to them in some way.
On the
What was going
horizon,
on
when
with
you
all
see
those knocks you had on the door? You had people coming to the door a lot. Who were they?
Sure, David. In the middle of the night, at one point, there were hotel security people who said it was their job to get us out of there and down into the bomb shelters down on in the sub-basement of the hotel. And we obviously didn't want to do that. We wanted to be where we could find out from you what was going on and where we could report to you.
Look at the horizon on your screen. What you're watching there, in many instances, are the explosions of the bombs as they're hitting. And this sound, these sirens, are very eerie. Throughout the last 3 days, John, in Baghdad, in broad daylight, I have slept in my clothes for the last 2 days.
Absolutely. I remember, Bernie, I was on the communication system with CNN, and you had been on it for about 20 hours straight. You'd go down to lie down and get a little sleep, and another siren would come, some more anti-aircraft fire would come, and these huge, loud explosions out in the distance would occur. That's a revolving restaurant, by the way, that you saw there. It looks a little bit like a mushroom lit up by the blast of a bomb in the background.
Is that Peter saying this is it?
No, I think that's footage from another network. That's their reporter, I believe, or maybe
okay.
one of their people out there. But you can see the sky lit up there with the anti-aircraft fire going up. We thought at the time we saw some aluminum or chaff that was put out by the American or the Allied planes
To jam radar.
Yeah, to confuse the radar.
And electronics.
Yeah.
Now, that was a big hit there. That was
the
a
one.
big hit.
You and I was standing in the window when that blast occurred, and I was forced back from the window. The viewers who were listening to that were probably worried about me.
And I hit the deck.
Yes.
There was video
As soon
today
as
from
I
the
felt it.
Pentagon, gentlemen, showing the effectiveness of some of that right through a slit in the roof of one of the buildings. We had
heard about that video.
just outstanding stuff. Your trip across the desert today, how long was it? I'm not going to ask you what you saw, but how long was it? Were you ever in any danger?
I don't think we were ever in any danger. We left about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, It is now nearly 3 o'clock in the morning, so it took more than, I guess, 14 hours to get to this point from the time that we left.
If you include that 3 or 4 hour wait there when we were between borders, but as I sat there in the back of the car I was in, CNN had a 3-convoy operation going. It was a frantic and a nervous race across desert highways as we sought to get to the Jordanian border before nightfall. We didn't make it. We missed it by about 90 minutes, but in the process, I want to say 2 things very pointedly. There's no way that we could have traversed the distance that we've just come without the assistance of the Iraqi government, especially the Ministry of Information. They bent over backwards for us, and some of our drivers were in tears as we said goodbye to them and thanked them for all their services. One other thing, I'd just like to say thank you to His Majesty King Hussein of Jordan, because he picked up the telephone. He apparently knew we were coming and called his customs people and his border guards ahead of us. And we were able to get through customs at the Jordanian border rather quickly. Otherwise, we would not be talking to you at this moment.
That's right. Some of our colleagues who have tried to have a similar journey to the one that we just had were delayed for nearly 24 hours getting here because they didn't have the cooperation that we had. And we don't know why the Iraqi authorities are being as cooperative with us as they are, but King Hussein, it's just amazing that the help that he has provided to us. And we can tell you in general about our trip across. It took a long time. We were stopped, I think we figured out 16 times.
I stopped counting after 15, John.
Yeah, the security, not only in Jordan but in Iraq, is very tight right now. In Iraq, you have to pull out your passport, it seemed like every few minutes to show it to somebody. And they wanted to make sure we had the right stamps on our passports. In Baghdad, before we left, the Iraqi government and the Jordanian embassy there told us we needed some specific stamps in our passports. They expedited things for CNN because, of course, King Hussein and some other people in Jordan watch our network and wanted us to be safe. I think they have a personal feeling of caring about us. But, sure, Bernie, go ahead.
Just a little aside. Tonight, both in Iraq and here in Jordan, the sky is a deep black, and it's crusted with stars. I've never seen so many stars in my life. And at one point, given the climate and given the fact that we were listening to radios, picking up Israeli radio, Voice of America, the BBC, to catch up with what was going on, because we've been isolated in a way, and David French, you're going to have to bring us up to date and we can check facts. But at one point, we froze because we saw something trailing across the sky, spewing sparks and what have you. And our first thought was that it might be a rocket. Well, it was going on a north to south trajectory.
Hey, Bernie?
But after we thought about it a little bit, we realized that might be the Soviet satellite. Yes, David?
You're right. Richard Blystone had it on live with all the excitement of what you were feeling as you saw it.
So that was it.
Yeah, that was it. We're going to be back with you two. Right. We're going to be back with you two gentlemen in just a moment. We're going to pick up, when we come back, those last moments of your broadcast and then go on from there.
You see, I figured it was another tie. But when I open the box, I see this thing that looks like...
Now there's no turning back. Sybil Shepherd, John Waters, a TNT exclusive premiere. Which Way Home? January 28th on TNT.
Pulitzer Prize-winning correspondent Peter Arnett and 2 others for CNN remain in Baghdad. John Holloman and Bernard Shaw have made it out. We're going back now to those moments, those last moments they were allowed to broadcast by the Iraqis before the Iraqis, for their reasons, decided that that would be enough. Those last moments now.
And on the streets right now, we see some automobiles with their lights on going down the main drag of town. Everybody on our CNN crew and all the other reporters who are here, although there's only a handful, maybe 25 left, are all in good shape. They're in good shape. Just a minute, a man has come into the room, and he's Mr. Allah from the government. Mr. Allah, tell me what you want me to do, sir. I don't understand. You got to talk to me.
Well, John, Mr. Allah is making a gesture that would requires us to cut off our communication. Is that right, Mr. Allah? Can you give us a reason for it, Mr. Allah, as to why we should close down now?
The duration of the PTT. What does that mean? What's the PTT?
Are we required to do so at what time, Mr. Allah?
Robert Wiener has just come back up after his series of negotiations. Robert, tell us what is happening. Tell us what the situation is.
John?
We unfortunately have been ordered to cease transmitting. It was an order given by the Ministry of Information. The reason for this order was military censorship. We have been told that we may no longer transmit live to our audience, and that in the future, taped reports will be subject to censorship. So that's, well, I don't know what to tell you, Bob Cainard and Bobby Batista and our viewers. This official, Mr. Allah, who's been a good friend to CNN for our time here, is now, demanding that we do something that we desperately don't want to do.
So, John, I will make the decision to cut the communications because I'm the senior man here. So, Bob Wiener and John Holloway and John Holloman and Bernie Shaw and myself, Peter Arnett, who is signing off from Baghdad for CNN, and I hope we can resume our communication with you in the very near future.
For those of you in Atlanta and up and down the network, we'll try to get back in touch with you as soon as we can. Obviously, this is something that is just abhorrent to all of us in our journalism. We'll talk to you as soon as we can.
It was an awful moment, Bernie, because we felt that we had been doing a pretty good job for our viewers of keeping them informed about what was going on in Baghdad. And to have Mr. Allah, this 29-year-old bachelor, a junior staff member of the Ministry of Information, a man who had helped us translate Saddam Hussein's speeches in the past, to have him come in there and go like this. I mean, obviously, I knew what he was doing. I wanted it not to be true, and I wanted to continue to do our report for as long as possible. And what I was trying to do in that situation was to stall him, perhaps get him back in the hall out of earshot so that I could give some more information to our viewers. But it was not to be, and Peter obviously was very concerned and decided he would just shut us, make the final call to put us off at that point, because we wanted to have the Iraqi officials not harm us, and to continue to give us at least some access to what the news was.
As
Well, that's precisely the way of...
Bernie, as
Yes,
you two
David,
could
go ahead.
as you two could well imagine, it was an awful moment for all of us too. And I'd like to ask you, Bernie, because we lost track of it for a while, what you can tell us about what happened then, where you went, what you did.
Say that again, David. I didn't understand the last part.
Well, back here, we sort of lost track of you when you signed off. We had no way of knowing if everything was all right, and you're aware of that. Fill us in on where you went and what you did.
Well, it occurs to me what David French is asking us about is how we spent last night. We spent 12 hours in a bomb shelter last night at the hotel where we stayed with elderly people, crying babies, husbands, wives, widows, widowers, and I would roughly estimate there were about 300 or 400 people there in 2 different bomb shelters.
Yeah, it's a small area for that many people, and the reason it was so full was that there had been a report which was delivered to CNN that said that the military might be about to bomb close to the area where the hotel was. The night before, the pictures that we showed a few minutes ago were pictures made the first night of bombing, and while we heard F-16 jets flying over the hotel pretty close, there was certainly no ordnance dropped very close to the hotel. It was all several miles away from us, and the indication from this report, which turned out to be untrue, was that the bombing would be closer to the hotel, and so everybody got the word. Rumors travel like wildfire, and people got into the bomb shelters, and we stayed there for a horrible 12 hours.
Well, the thing is that the hotel people are so security conscious and safety conscious that once you go down those 3 flights of stairs into this shelter that they say could take a nuclear hit, once you go down, they don't let you up.
That's right. I was able to get out. Yeah.
You sneaked out. I sneaked out the night before, and there were only 2 working toilets, and I think I borrowed Chrissy's, our editor's, a goose-down jacket and tried to make a pillow out of that, and I was on the floor. And what really made me angry was that I went to the men's room, and when I came back, this French woman, you remember the little old lady on the other side of the door?
Yeah.
When I walked back, she was sitting right in my place. And I looked at her, and obviously you're not going to tell an old lady in a bomb shelter, you're in my spot, you have to move. So that's why I moved out into the hallway.
And you
I
were
sat
trying
on
to
that.
sleep in a chair like this
Yeah.
For hours and hours.
So, that's where we were last night.
Yeah, it was not pleasant. And when I was able to get back upstairs to look out the window of the hotel, I wasn't able to see anything. So I mean, it didn't seem that there was anything going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then back into the shelter for a little while longer. All the doors had been locked to our rooms. It would have been really, for me, much more pleasant to sleep in a nice bed than on the hard concrete floor of this bomb shelter, which we tried to do. And as you can see from looking at me, it didn't do much good. It was a rough night.
Well, I don't know how you smell, but I don't like the way I smell. We haven't had running water in that hotel in the last 60 hours or so. No electricity, and I've been eating, frankly, the things that I bought at the giant food store in Tacoma Park, Maryland, David. I stocked up on candy bars and tuna fish and chicken, and I'm damn glad we did.
Yeah, I brought in about 100 pounds of tuna fish in cans from Washington when I came in, along with an electrical generator, which we used to power a lot of our equipment up until this point. At the time we were leaving this morning, though, the government officials were saying they wanted to confiscate our generator, not because they needed it, but because they just didn't want us to have it for some reason.
There's a lot of that going on.
Sure.
But in a word, to go back to your question, we were, in effect, locked up. For our own protection, I should say.
Well, I've talked to Tacoma Park earlier, Bernie, and of course we've had our eye on Aldie, Virginia. You two are going to be heroes there. Much of our industry has just been full of praise for the work that you did. We won't go into that too deeply here, but you're going to have a lot of mail to read when you get home, both in your computers and in your mailboxes, and it's so well earned. I mean, I was in awe of your work that night. Let me ask you further. I noticed you thanked King Hussein for his help, and you have further to go. I want to give you one more piece of news that might be of interest to you if you don't have it. Jordan's parliament has called on all Arabs and Muslims to strike at the interests of the countries fighting Iraq. So King Hussein's favors to you are taken in that light. And we'll be back to continue our conversation with you, your welcome home conversation, in a moment.
You see, I figured it was another tie. But when I open the box, I see this thing that looks like a baby typewriter. So I asked, what is it? She says it's a Brother P-Touch. She says it's a new electronic labeling system that makes adhesive labels in 5 sizes, 4 styles, and lots of colors. First, I labeled file folders, computer disks, my videotapes. I can't. You gotta help me with this problem. What problem?
He's not good with people.
You mean living people?
Patients, people, yes. Not great with patients.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
And terrible with the administration.
These people are alive inside. How do you know that, doctor?
But it took a person like Dr. Sayre
It's a miracle.
to discover what no one else could.
Have you thought what you'd like to do today?
Everything.
Robert De Niro, Robin Williams, Awakenings, rated PG-13. Now playing in a theater near you. Check newspapers for locations.
When I get headaches, it feels to me as though there's an army inside my head just banging away.
Today, it isn't regular aspirin. It's Advil for tough headache pain.
My doctor, he uses Advil, and he recommended it to me. Advil works for my headache, and it doesn't upset my stomach.
Just one Advil is as effective as 2 regular aspirin.
Advil works on my headache every time.
Advil, tablets and caplets, advanced medicine for pain.
To get rid of her gray, my wife can spend 40 minutes. But I discovered the 5-minute hair coloring.
The revolutionary discovery called Just for Men from the leader in men's hair coloring. Simply apply Just for Men and in 5 minutes shampoo out.
Gray is blended away. The look of my natural color is back in 5 minutes. That was me, and it won't fade or wash out.
My hair takes forever, but you look great in just 5 minutes.
The look of your natural color in just 5 minutes with Just for Men.
Bernie Shaw, I know you're a former Marine. I know you're a journalist with lots of sand under your sandals and water under your rudder. I know you were at Jonestown, Guyana. I know you shut down our operations at Tiananmen Square. I know you were there when they pulled the plug on you early Thursday morning. I know you have feelings. I know you like to keep them to yourself. You're the most thorough journalist professional I know in that regard. But I have to pull some out of you now, Bernie, some of the feelings.
One of the things I was afraid of doing, David, was allowing myself to feel. It's a strange dichotomy a journalist goes through when he or she is under the gun, yet realizing that work has to be done, that you have to do reporting. So I was very concerned that I report what my eyes were seeing and what my senses were telling me, but that I report it factually. And I think that I went through most of my feeling when I stood down and either John Holloman or Peter Arnett was in the barrel, and I would go back to my room and try to go to sleep, and I could not sleep. As John indicated, when the sirens would go off during the day, I was up. I was fearful. That is why I've only had about 6 hours sleep in the last 36 hours, so if I start losing it, John, you tap me, or David, you tell me, Bernie, wake up. But as I watched what was happening, as I felt the ground rumbling under me, as I felt exposed, I thought about the people who were at ground zero where that was happening, and I thought about these combatants, and at one point I remember an alliteration came to my mind. I closed my eyes, and I thought as the ground was shaking under me, I said to myself, this is thunder, this is lightning, this is death, this is hell.
Bernard Shaw, John Holloman, we're coming back to you shortly. Don't go away, and we'll be back after this.
One day, when you least expect it, you're going to have an irresistible urge to seascape.
So much to do, it's hard to choose. When Seascape takes you on a day cruise.
Dazzling entertainment, fabulous food, fun in the sun. It's all included in a Seascape cruise from Miami or Fort Lauderdale to Freeport or Bimini, or a half-day cruise to nowhere. Fares start at just $29.
Let Seascape take you on a day cruise.
You're just 55 minutes from Merv Griffin's Paradise Island Resort and Casino in the Bahamas. The world's most complete private island resort with miles of white sandy beaches, spectacular super shows, 12 gourmet and specialty restaurants, championship golf, tennis, and water sports. Others may promise paradise, but only one delivers. Paradise Island Resort and Casino. There's no better place to play. Call your travel agent or 800-432-8807.
This is CNN.
Wednesday night last, the world was normal. I was sitting here in Bernard Shaw's chair. He was in Baghdad with John Holloman and Peter Arnett. I was interviewing Caspar Weinberger sitting over here, and then the word came through, the horrible word that the world was suddenly upside down. These two guys told you all about it. We're going to hear it again, how it began. We have to go to Baghdad, Secretary. We're going to Bernard Shaw in Baghdad.
This is, something is happening outside. Peter Arnett joined me here. Let's describe to our viewers what we're seeing. The skies over Baghdad have been illuminated. We're seeing bright flashes going off all over the sky. Peter?
Well, there's anti-aircraft gunfire going into the sky. We hear the sound of planes. They're coming over our hotel. However, we have not yet heard the sound of bombs landing, but there's tremendous lightning in the sky, lightning like a fix. Bernie?
I have a sense, Peter, that people are shooting towards the sky, and they are not aware
or cannot see what they're shooting at. This is extraordinary. The lights are still on. All the street lights in downtown Baghdad are still on. But as you look, you see trails of flashes of light going up into the air, obviously anti-aircraft fire. We're getting starbursts, seeming starbursts in the black sky. We have not heard any jet planes yet, Peter. No plane. Now the sirens are sounding for the first time. The Iraqis have informed us.
Well, we heard Peter Arnett saying the Iraqis have informed us, and then we didn't hear anymore. This is probably just a technical glitch. They have 4 wires there that they can use, and those wires can be easily severed or pulled.
What was going on there was that the lights went out in our hotel, and our ability to talk to you was, at that point, determined by whether we had electricity that we could plug into in the wall. We had a battery backup for our little transmission system, and for our system to listen to Atlanta and the network back. And we had, in the heat of the moment, I was trying to take a nap when the siren went off. I was rushing, putting on some shorts, putting on a T-shirt that said CNN, the news leader or something, and rushing into the room to try to get in there. And by the time I got there, Peter and Bernie realized that they weren't able to communicate anymore. So I grabbed a battery and found a way in the dark to plug it into the back of the box. And then we tried to continue to talk, but didn't know if anybody could hear us because we didn't have a battery for the machine that listened back.
Well,
and it took about 5 or 10 minutes, but it was a momentous few minutes there for me. To be jolted awake by the concussion of one of these bombs, and to hear this siren in your ears, and you knew it was the attack warning, and then to begin to hear the anti-aircraft fire that was so nearby. You could hear it on the TV there. I mean, it was horrible.
Well, certainly there was horror, John Holloman. I had a problem when I was screaming into the microphone to get the network's attention, because as this was happening, I was holding my breath. I found myself constantly holding my breath, and I had to tell myself, breathe, Bernie, breathe. And when Peter, that's why I asked Peter Arnett, describe for our viewers what is going on. I was actually trying to help him and get my breath and collect my thoughts. And then after that, of course, we hit the floor. The most frustrating thing for any journalist is to wonder whether what you've written or what you've reported has been filed, has got out. And I wasn't sure we were on the air or not. And that was my biggest worry, that this was happening, this was going down, and we might be off the air. But later I was assured by headquarters in Atlanta that we indeed were. And I think it was after that point that we took turns keeping our heads out of harm's way.
Yeah, and there was one head usually at the window looking out to describe what we could see, and then everybody else was sort of on the floor. And Peter Arnett, ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you that I've never been in a war before. Peter Arnett has been in several, and the presence of this man, the man who decided today he wanted to stay in Baghdad rather than get out with the rest of us, it's remarkable. I was looking out the window and describing things, and Peter was coming up to me and taking the microphone and offering you, our viewers, the perspective on what this really meant. Now, I'm told that we have Peter's most recent report here on CNN, which is not very recent because of the censorship and the communication problems that we're faced with right now. But I think we can now listen to Peter Arnett's last report from Baghdad. Let's listen.
It's good to be back in touch with you again from here in Baghdad. It's been a quiet afternoon in the skies over the Iraqi capital. The Gulf War, of course, is going into its second day. At the moment, however, there has been an air raid alert siren. We're in the lobby of the Al Rashid Hotel. Everyone else has been told to go to the basement shelters. They presume that an attack is coming in any moment. In the morning today, there was a series of bombings in the suburbs against targets unknown to us. During the previous evening, raids were closer to the city center, and they shook the hotel where we are staying. Government officials say the general command of the Iraqi armed forces has released a battle communique. It claims that Iraqi air defenses have knocked down 72 American and other multinational aircraft since the first bombing raids began in the early morning hours of Thursday. Today, the government claims 7 aircraft were shot down, 5 in the battlefront and 2 inside Iraq. The communique also said that in response to the aerial bombardment of the multinational coalition, Iraq launched what it called its own effective strikes, setting fire to enemy targets and inflicting casualties. They are their words. We've just been talking to the Minister of Information, who's given a brief press conference. He was asked by the press to show us some of the wreckage and if there were any captured American pilots and could we meet them. He said there were captured American pilots, we could meet them soon, but he added no further clarification. Now, the International Press Corps in Baghdad is operating under censorship as from today. Under this policy, we are required to submit our stories in advance to officials from the Information Ministry to read. Reporters have been permitted to travel around the capital. CNN has reduced its personnel here from 8 to 3 as the International Press Corps continues to dwindle. The Al Rashid Hotel has become a haven for foreigners, some unintentionally caught up in the hostilities, and they're now trying to seek to escape overland to Jordan. Peter Arnett reporting live from Baghdad.
Well, as you could readily hear, that report was heavily censored. That is the new policy, and as Peter indicated, he has to hand in his copy. John, I wanted to check the timing. I think that report was filed at 9:26 a.m. Eastern Time. That meant that Baghdad time, that was 5:26 in the evening, and it occurs to me that that latest attack came exactly 5.5 hours after our caravan left Baghdad, headed for the Jordanian border.
Yeah, we have heard other reports about this attack, not from CNN, but from actually we listened to a BBC reporter who was there and was able to get a report on the BBC, and his report indicated that it was heavy bombing out in the outskirts of Baghdad, nowhere near the area where Peter was, which was the same thing that he was allowed to report in what you just heard. One more point to make to our network of viewers and also to our network officials. We were told as we left the hotel 14 hours ago now that the Ministry of Information was going to confiscate cameras starting tomorrow. A still photographer gave us this information, and we were also given the indication that our television cameras that weren't confiscated the night of the first attack might also be taken. And
John and Bernie, we're going to take a brief break. We'll be back with you in Amman, Jordan, in a moment.
Okay.
There goes my stomach again. But I've had it up to here with this antacid taste.
Then get great flavor up to here with the rich, fruity taste of Extra Strength Malox Plus Cherry Cream. Up to here with the fresh, minty taste of mint cream. And up to here with the zesty lemon taste of lemon Swiss cream. The strongest antacid tastes the best too. Extra Strength Malox Plus. Strong relief for all of your Malox moments.
Malox, you're the best.
I have a horrible sinus headache. There's pounding, there's pressure, there's pain.
Today, Linda Clark is trying Tylenol Sinus.
Tylenol Sinus took away the pressure. It took away the pain. It took away the pounding. I like that it's a Tylenol product. I trust that name.
Tylenol Sinus, the strength you need from the name you trust. And now look for new Tylenol Sinus gel caps. Maximum strength, concentrated, and gelatin coated so they're easy to swallow. Only from Tylenol, the first sinus gel cap.
Take your average family trip, but take it in a not-so-average family car. The new Volkswagen Passat. The Passat wagon comes with four-wheel disc brakes. It's got plenty of room for your family. And best of all, Fahrvergnügen, which means you might even forget you're driving a family car.
Are we there yet?
Well, maybe not. Fahrvergnügen, it's what makes a car a Volkswagen. Nice logo, too.
Heart disease is the nation's number one killer.
You make me feel so young.
An estimated 60 million Americans have high serum cholesterol.
You make me feel there are songs to be sung.
Too much saturated fat may be bad for your height.
And every time I see you grin,
Bad for your height.
I am such a happy individual.
For your heart.
Even when I'm old and gray, I'm gonna feel the way I do today. 'Cause you make me feel so young.
Promise, get heart smart.
We're back with the men who didn't need Horace Greeley to tell them to go west. They are safely in Amman, Jordan, after escaping from Iraq and their heroic coverage in Baghdad of the bombing of Baghdad. Let me bring you up to date on a couple of news items, gentlemen. Today, the Pentagon said that 3 more U.S. planes were missing, making a total of 4. There are 7 crew members missing, according to the Pentagon. Israel is pretty quiet tonight. You know, last night they, I don't know if you know, were hit by about 8 Scud missiles. There are no deaths. There were some injuries. There was a lot of excitement in Israel last night. Israel's quiet tonight. The sorties continue throughout Iraq and Kuwait at this hour. Gentlemen, take it.
Well, we'd like to talk a little bit about the people who have made it possible for us to be on television with you for the past several days. A man who's probably the most remarkable television cameraman and certainly the most brave available in the world today. CNN's Mark Biello took many of the pictures that you either have seen or will be seeing over the next couple of days, as all the videotapes we brought with us out of Baghdad are allowed to be shown now that we're here in Jordan, where there is no censorship as far as we know. And also a woman who put together some of the stories that you saw me, Peter Arnett, Richard Roth, Richard Blystone do from Baghdad, Chris Manich, a woman who managed to keep her cool through all the bombing and all the excitement and all the horror of being in Baghdad. She has managed to escape with us tonight. And a woman who I had a great deal of respect for by reputation before I began working with her in Baghdad 2 months ago, Ingrid Formanek, our producer. A remarkable woman, a woman who speaks at least 7 languages. Tonight, we were at a checkpoint where the Iraqi officials were not being too nice to many of the folks who came through with their passports. This official found out that we were journalists and began to it sounded like, his expression looked like the expression of a man who was trying to give us a hard time and refused to speak any English to us. Ingrid began to speak Czechoslovakian, and this man had some language training in Czechoslovakian. The man's whole demeanor changed because of Ingrid's abilities. He began to smile. He stamped our passports with the all-important Iraqi exit visa at the border. And Ingrid did the things that were necessary to keep us safe and alive while we were in Baghdad and while we were getting out, in addition to being a remarkable journalist, a woman who did many of the interviews that you saw in our reports from Baghdad, a woman who went to the streets when there were 400 Vietnamese refugees at the airport trying to leave who had no money. She gave them money, then she went and got them something to eat for 400 people. I mean, this woman has got a heart as big as this network's audience, and she's remarkable. She's brilliant. She's quite a journalist and quite a human being.
I don't mean to sound flippant, but it occurs to me, and I hope she'll take this in the spirit in which I mean it, she also has a mouth that's as big as the network, and I guess that's why it gets a lot of attention. Just kidding, honey. One thing about the 3 people who are on the ground in Baghdad, covering this story now that the fist of censorship has come down. 3 people. Nick Robertson is a flyaway engineer. He's based in London. Also, there is Robert Wiener, based in Germany as bureau chief. I think I recall describing him to Tom Johnson, the president of CNN, and during one period of internal communications as, I said, Tom, Robert, Mr. Robert, as they call him in Iraq, and dealing with the officials and the guides and the drivers, I said, Robert Wiener is the brains and the brawn over here behind this operation. And of course, last but hardly least, is Peter Arnett, former Associated Press award-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. It's just so large having him as a colleague and a friend. And if you were watching CNN, I believe it was Tuesday, I lose track of the time, we were interviewing Walter Cronkite, and Walter was expressing his concerns. You remember the last thing, and these 2 guys go way, way back to Vietnam. You might recall that Cronkite said to Peter, you've been in this game a long time, don't grandstand. Well, Walter, if you're watching tonight, I don't think Peter is grandstanding. I don't think that we could have blown him out of there with a satchel charge, John.
A remarkable story. Throughout the night of the 15th, when we thought we might be bombed instantly at any moment, we had internal discussions among the 8 of us from CNN who were in Baghdad. Should we stay? Should we go? What does the network want us to do? What's right for our personal safety? Peter Arnett continued to be the voice saying, this is the biggest story you're going to see in your life. You want to be here and cover this story. And Peter was, of course, right, certainly from my point of view. And he said, we're not doing this for awards. I mean, I've got all the awards that they've ever given out. I'm not here for that. I'm here because this is the big story. And that's certainly been my position all along as well. We were talking to Robert Wiener, a man who said, I may not be very smart, but I have great instincts. And I said to Robert, I have no instincts, but I do have a desire to be here and cover the news. When you think it's unsafe for me to be here, tell me to leave, which is what he did today.
Well, I was there because we had every reason to believe that President Saddam Hussein was going to do an interview. We had interviewed him in October. So I went to Baghdad to prepare for the interview and to interview the president. Well, obviously, once I arrived, he obviously was a very, very busy leader, given the serious matters he's involved with right now. So I just joined my other two colleagues in doing what we do very naturally, and that is gravitate towards news, a news story to report. If you're wondering why I've been fidgeting around, I brought out of Baghdad with me some requests. People, when they found out that we were leaving, they said, is CNN leaving fully? We explained, we're not leaving fully. We're leaving a skeleton crew here on the ground. And people were handing me messages. And Bob Fernand, the executive producer of this broadcast, don't think I've got 10 minutes of names. I only have about 90 seconds, or maybe less than that. But one person who asked me to be sure to call his son in College Park, Maryland, which is just a matter of blocks from where I live. He goes to the University of Maryland. He is Ranul Gunawardene, and his father is the Sri Lanka ambassador to Iraq. And he asked me to call you, Ranil, and to tell you, quote, we are okay, signed Dad and Mom. And he told me that you switched your major in college from economics to broadcast journalism. So when I get back to Washington, I hope to ring you up, not this week, but maybe in a couple weeks, so we can sit down and chat and maybe invite you into the CNN bureau in Washington. John, last night, I hear you slept well, and Mark Biello apparently slept well after he shot some pictures we want to show you what it was like inside this bomb shelter. And we explained earlier, a couple days ago, I think, that this is a very special hotel, the Al Rashid Hotel.
Let me show you what you're looking at. It's probably got the best bomb shelters of any hotel in Baghdad. On the television set there is some video of President Saddam Hussein. It is video that was shown to the Iraqi people for the first time at the moment they were in the bomb shelter. Our viewers got to see this video the day before. An interesting aspect of when Iraqi television had the ability to send pictures to the outside world, CNN viewers got them long before the Iraqi people got them. And the Iraqi people in the bomb shelter, the second night of the bombing by the coalition forces, were watching President Saddam Hussein on a prayer rug, praying, and you can see the people there, old and young, women and men, babies and children, some babies crying all night long, I might add. But everybody lying down there trying to get a little rest.
I heard them more than you did.
Oh, there was one little child right beside me, Bernie. I was difficult to keep my composure.
John and Bernie, this is David French again. We have about a couple minutes left for you here before we can let you get a little shut-eye if you can. It sure is quieter, right? A final thought?
Much quieter.
A final thought for this?
You go first, Bernie.
After you, Alphonse.
All right. I'm very glad to be out of Iraq. I miss the Iraqi people. The Iraqi people, you must realize how wonderful and kind and hospitable the Iraqi people are. The Iraqi government officials didn't like the roles they were put into, to be censors and to be pushy and to force us not to do the things that we came there to do. I miss them, but I'm very glad to be where I am. I'm very glad to have been able to have a telephone call with my wife a couple of minutes before we went on the air. And I'd let you know, honey, I'm very glad to be where I am now with my buddy Bernie Shaw. Bernie.
John, the feeling is mutual, and just thinking about the storyline, which is so grave, we've been talking about impressions, but I have to go back to President Saddam Hussein and his challenge to the alliance and his rejection of the United Nations deadline and the indications now that he's going to do what he has said he would do. One, that he would not withdraw. He said that tonight, incidentally. We heard him on Baghdad radio in the car moving from Iraq to Jordan. So who knows how long this is going to go on. But
guys, I've got a couple of messages for you. I have a
Yes,
couple
go
of
ahead,
messages
please.
for you. If you could pull out to a wide shot, a little bit wider two-shot there. This is from Ed Turner. He's sorry for having to dock your pay today. You were missing about 12 or 13 hours. And, John, he wants your scanner back. And when we get back to the bureau here, our bureau chief is going to have a tuna fish banquet. Just for you.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, men.
That's what we need, Dave.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing your adventure with us. We'll be hearing much more from you. Coming along at the top of the hour is Larry King Live. He will have a whip around with all of the correspondents and the experts as we continue our War on the Gulf crisis reports. Right now, let's go to Catherine Cryer, our colleague in Atlanta, for the latest after these messages. I'm David French in Washington.
Some people are still wondering if PIP printing does multicolor printing. The answer is...
It is still some 10 hours away. They know enough to be scared.
Dave, I love you. I want you to come home soon.
Hi, Daddy. I love you.
The door of the storage bunker.
This is the technology the United States was relying on to defeat a much more powerful adversary than Iraq. These systems were built to beat the Soviet Union. There had been a lot of doubt about whether these complex systems would actually work under combat conditions. Ironically, nearly all these weapons have been extremely controversial, the subject of sometimes bitter debates over cost overruns. The Pentagon offered visual proof this morning.
And this is my counterpart's headquarters in Baghdad. This is the headquarters of the Air Force, and keep your eye on all sides of the building as the airplane overflies the building and drops the bomb down through the center of the building.
There's a lot more to a successful strike than these video game-like images would lead one to believe. After all, these are real bombs being dropped on people who are shooting back. The ability to get in and get out safely is a function of tactics, equipment, and training. This is how we're told it happened in the Gulf. Navy Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from battleships, skimmed along the surface of the desert to explode at critical points in the Iraqi command and control system, headquarters, communication centers, and radar installations. At the same time, Air Force F-117 stealth fighters were attacking the same kinds of targets, particularly the radar sites that control Iraqi anti-aircraft artillery and missile batteries. The stealth technology uses a combination of special shapes and materials in aircraft construction to render the planes all but invisible to radar. Most of the dramatic strike footage released today came from F-117s. Right behind them were F-4G Wild Weasels and EF-111 Ravens. These planes are heavily laden with electronic equipment designed to blind enemy radar with confusing signals. They also carry missiles that home in on radar transmitters and destroy them. The Navy has a similar plane called the EA-6B Prowler. The missiles are called HARM. The acronym stands for High-Speed Anti-Radiation Missile. The next wave carries the bombs. The Air Force's new F-15 Strike Eagle, a two-seat version of the F-15 fighter plane, saw action for the first time in the Gulf. It carries an improved night-flying vision system to help the pilot find targets under the worst kind of weather conditions. In this McDonnell Douglas demonstration tape, an F-15E flies along a ridgeline covered in smoke from a forest fire, much like the smoke that would hover over a battlefield. The view from the enhanced display is dramatic, literally turning night into day. Other types of strike aircraft have similar systems, if not as advanced. One of them is the F-111. It was originally designed to fulfill a dual role for both the Air Force and the Navy, the highly controversial TFX program from the Vietnam era. Some of today's strike tape was shot from F-111s. The amazing accuracy that allows this fighter to identify a target, turn away from it, but continue to keep the crosshairs on this missile storage building and literally fly the bombs through the doorway is possible because of lasers. The system allows the weapons officer, who flies behind the pilot, to place a laser beam on the point of aim and hold it there even while the pilot maneuvers violently to avoid enemy ground fire. The bombs are released automatically, and sensors in the warheads home in on the laser beam. The Navy has similar attack aircraft in its A-6 Intruders, A-7 Corsairs, and its new F-18 Hornets. The attack jets are vulnerable to hostile fighter planes as they make their bomb runs. That's why American fighters orbit overhead to protect them. Air Force F-15 and Navy F-14 fighters carry medium-range radar-guided Sparrow and infrared-guided Sidewinder air-to-air missiles and multi-barrel cannons to deal with intruding fighters bent on breaking up the attack force. Obviously, a great deal of coordination is necessary for a successful strike to occur,